Virtually all the British Seagull outboard motors I've ever come across use the Edwards push-pull fill tap. They're very common, they're made in absolute millions. They're not only used for British Seagull, they're used on early motorbikes, mowers. As I say, they were made in their millions, and they're nothing more than a little cork plunger that interferes with the flow or shuts off the flow of fuel. I'm sure you know this. Anyway, these are absolutely fine and have been around for decades, but the problem can happen if they should dry out. It's a good idea when laying up an outboard to empty your tank, take out the little plunger, which is just held by that screw, and pop it in a jar with a few drops of fuel or a plastic zip-up bag, ready for required next year. But if you don't, the cork can dry out, same as a cork in a wine bottle, and consequently they drip and they don't seal properly. Well, you can soak them in fuel and that will usually cure them. If they've gone really bad and it's not split, take the plunger out and drop it in a kettle or saucepan and boil it for 5-10 minutes and it'll swell up nicely. But if it's been allowed to completely distort, split and break, you'll have to replace the cork. It's quite an easy thing to do. Undo the little screw at the side. You needn't take it all the way out, or if you do, put it somewhere safe and pull out the plunger. And you can see that that screw sits in that little slot there. Now, there's nothing wrong with this cork. This actually belongs to a friend who I said, have you got a spare one, just to demonstrate. So I won't mess about with this, but let's assume we want to take that cork out. How do we do that? Well, it's quite simple. Purchase your cork like this, and this piece is a one piece all the way through, and it's an interference fit at this end. They don't unscrew or anything. So take a socket or something that can drop on, and if that sits up there slightly, give it a tap, flatten it off, and then with a smaller punch than that, I've had to use a piece of stainless, give it a good whack and you'll drive out this piece complete. Pop on your new cork, turn it round the other way and give it a good tap back, and then with a smear of grease or Vaseline, line up the slot with your screw. Maybe a bit stiff, but it will ease off once you've used it a few times and it's settled down. Do the screw up firmly. If you've lost this, by the way, where do you get another one? Well, British 13 amp plugs, the old style, used to have those as grub screws. So that will get you out of trouble. But try not to lose it because it is shaped. I will remind you again not to lose that little screw. As I say, it is shaped, and you guys in the States won't have access to 13 amp plugs as we have in the UK, so don't lose it. You can buy them. That little screw, you can buy it on eBay. £3.50. You must be joking. Talk about greed. I've seen these little corks up to £7 for a piece of cork. You've got to be balmy, or more money and cents if you pay £7 for a piece of cork. They're so easy to make yourself. Just simply get yourself a cork from a wine bottle and make half a dozen. Then you'll have spares when you need one. So how do we make these little corks? Well, it's quite simple. Get yourself a wine bottle cork, one that hasn't been used obviously. A winemaker will give you a few corks surely. You don't need a lathe or anything. Electric drill would be handy. First of all, we drill a hole in the centre of the cork. Doesn't have to be accurate. Here I'm using a 3mm drill. Just judge it by eye and go in the middle. Here I've put the electric drill in the vise. Be very careful if you've got a plastic body. And here's a piece of threaded, well, it's a BA bolt with the head cut off, and we want it longer than the cork. So I'll start the drill and just holding the cork very lightly, lead it on. Like so. Now I found a nut and a washer. I'll just do that up by hand. Just gently so it just nips. Okay, and then taking a piece of this pan back, other way, pan back. Taking a piece of emery cloth. What's this about? 200 grit, I guess. Simply reduce the size. It takes a minute. I know that the end of that washer is the diameter I want, but they do vary slightly, so use a pair of those, check the diameter and sand the length to the correct length. It's as simple as that. Undo the nut. It's very easy to take off too much, and if you do, you can't add it on, you'll have to start again. But just take your time and get the length right and the diameter right. And 10 minutes in the workshop, you can make a few of those. Or you can start a business and charge £7 for them.